I must say I'm rather impressed that the Tower Theatre Company is daring to put on King Lear in the Shakespeare Garden in the Bois de Boulogne early June, June 2 to 6. Don't miss it. Not only because the unpredictable weather could turn the setting into an authentic stormy heath, but principally because it's one of the most difficult of Shakespeare's plays to stage. It ranks alongside Hamlet, Othello, and Macbeth among the Bard's greatest tragedies. Yet more than these others, it poses a special challenge to directors, actors, and audiences alike. How do you avoid getting thoroughly depressed? It's an immensely dark play, rife with betrayal, greed, cruelty, violence, and madness, with occasional rays of light provided by men who can show their decency only by assuming disguises. Shakespeare himself was only 42 when he wrote this play, but I often wonder if to understand it fully, you need to have experienced disappointment in what Lady Macbeth mockingly called the milk of human kindness. If we live long enough to see the world rush on without us, if we alone can remember our past glory, if no echoes of gratitude can be heard from subsequent generations who wish to speed us on our way, if anger and bitterness become our last companions, I guess we too can all become Lears. It's not hard to find others in public life, usually politicians unbalanced by the loss of power. One near Lear who comes to mind right here and now is Jean-Marie Le Pen, founder of France's extreme right-wing National Front. He thought that before his death, he could arrange how things would be after his death. So in 2011, at the age of 83, he imposed the youngest of his three daughters, Marine, as the new leader of the party. Well, why not? For 4 decades, the National Front had been his personal fiefdom, and he wanted to ensure a dynastic succession. But in no time, Marine formed her own court and began renouncing his beliefs and undermining his power. So now he can be seen ranting away, incredulous that he could be betrayed by his own flesh and blood, demanding that she no longer use his name, wishing her failure as his successor, and all along refusing to grasp that under the very rules he created, for his daughter to prosper, she had to kill him. Politically, that is. Or we can turn back the clock a few years and find a different example in Margaret Thatcher. She too enjoyed almost monarchical power in Britain until she became a liability to the ambitions of her own political children, and they tipped her out of Downing Street. The Iron Lady was reduced to tears. What traitors! Poor Maggie had forgotten that loyalty is a marketable commodity. So you see, they're always around: power, vanity, favoritism, ambition, jealousy, lust, family blood, and betrayal. Just the ingredients that Shakespeare loved to stir into a venomous and violent brew, like King Lear. Indeed, if Lear resembles life, it's perhaps worth recalling that almost every Shakespeare play borrows its story from some existing fable or account. So yes, in that sense, he was a plagiarist. Although, of course, Ovid, Plutarch, and Holinshed weren't around to complain anymore. But no matter what raw material fell into Shakespeare's hands, he transformed it beyond recognition with the magic of his poetry and his insights into the human condition. Well, you all know that, or else you wouldn't be here tonight. In this case, a play called The Chronicle History of King Lear, spelled L-E-I-R, was performed in London in around 1590, when Shakespeare was a young actor and just trying his hand as a writer. That play, along with Spenser's Faerie Queen and Holinshed's largely apocryphal account of a pre-Christian English monarch, provided the background for this play, written around 1606. As is often the case with Shakespeare's plays, there are several versions of this. Those are the quartos that circulated during Shakespeare's lifetime without his approval, and that of the first folio published by his closest actor friends in 1623, 7 years after his death. To add to the confusion, in 1681, that's with the Restoration, a certain Nahum Tate reworked Lear and gave it a happy ending. And so it's not just Hollywood, because for 150 years, this was the favorite account until Shakespeare's story was finally rescued and scholars set about arguing about the correct text. Now, even if you've seen King Lear before, I think it's helpful to run through the plot again. Why, you may ask? Well, because all your memories from school and childhood are great, I'm sure. To me, Shakespeare is a bit like opera. In both cases, plots can be convoluted, inconsistent, and confusing. But once you know them, you can suspend disbelief and enter a new world where music and words take over the emotions. In both cases, the narrative will stop to make room for an aria or a monologue, a duet or a dialogue, that reveal inner thoughts and feelings or reflections on the dilemmas of life. They are the keys to great works. That's why we learn something new every time we see or read a Shakespeare play we think we know. Like music, his words move us time and again. As it happens, King Lear's plot is particularly tricky because, unlike, say, Hamlet, Othello, and Macbeth, which are driven by simple, single narratives, here we have two parallel stories, both spawned by ambition for power, which only come together near the end of the play. As we move into this stage, I'll ask my partner to move forward towards his designated mic. His and his. The first plot involves the king himself, who now in his 80s decides to divide up his kingdom into three parts. He will remain king in name and retain a court. I think of him like an honorary king, the way that Jean-Marie Le Pen became honorary president. But administration of Britain will be handed over to his three daughters. First he asks them, "Tell me, my daughters, since now we will divest us, both of rule, interest of territory, cares of state, which of you shall we say doth love us most?" Well, who doesn't want to be loved in old age? Goneril, the eldest daughter, waxes poetic. "Beyond all manner of so much I love you." Regan, the middle daughter, says, "Goneril comes too short, and find I am alone felicited in your dear highness's love." Then comes Cordelia, who's been courted by the Duke of Burgundy and the King of France. Silly girl. She prefers honesty to flattery, albeit telling herself that my love's more richer than my tongue. But it's her tongue that gets her into trouble, confessing that once married, and unlike her sisters, she will share her love between her husband and her father. Oh dear, that's not what Dad wanted to hear. He tells her she'll get nothing, and the land will now be divided between Goneril and husband Albany, and Regan and husband Cornwall. Burgundy. Don't trust them. Drink Bordeaux. Burgundy promptly loses interest in Cordelia. But France, loyal France, still wants her. She is herself a dowry, he says very nicely. Lear is, of course, behaving like a silly old man, but only his loyal courtier, Kent, dare chastise him. First, Lear warns him. The bow is bent and drawn. Make from the shaft.
Let it fall rather, though the fork invade the region of my heart. Be Kent unmannerly when Lear is mad. What wilt thou do, old man? Think'st thou that duty shall have dread to speak, when power to flattery bows? To plainness honour's bound, when majesty stoops to folly. Reverse thy doom, and in thy best consideration, check this hideous rashness. Answer my life, my judgment. The youngest daughter does not love thee least, nor are those empty-hearted whose low sound reverbs no hollowness.
But Lear will have none of this, and he tears into poor Kent.
Hear me, recreant. On thine allegiance, hear me. Since thou hast sought to make us break our vow, which we durst never yet, and with strained pride to come between our sentence and our power, which nor our nature nor our place can bear, our potency made good, take thy reward. 5 days we do allot thee, for provision to shield thee from diseases of the world, and on the 6th to turn thy hated back upon our kingdom. If on the 10th day following thy banished trunk be found in our dominions, the moment is thy death. Away, by Jupiter, this shall not be revoked.
So Lear has his way. The daughters who claim to love him most get to share the kingdom, and Cordelia leaves to become Queen of France. Meanwhile, the other plot is getting started, this time with the Duke of Gloucester's bastard son Edmund trying to turn his father against his legitimate heir, Edgar. Early in the play, Gloucester had shown his affection for Edmund. Noting of his role in the hay with Edmund's mother, there was good sport at his making. But Edmund wants more, and having falsified a letter purporting to reveal Edgar's betrayal in the tradition of such great villains as Richard III and Iago, Edmund shares his evil intentions with the audience.
Thou nature art my goddess. To thy law my services are bound. Wherefore shall I stand in the plague of custom, and permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me, for that I am some 12 or 14 moonshines, lag of a brother? Why bastard? Wherefore base? When my dimensions are as well compact, my mind as generous, and my shape as true as honest madam's issue? Why brand they us with baseness, bastardy, base? Who in this lusty stealth of nature take more composition and fierce quality than doth within the dull, stale, tired bed go to the creating a whole tribe of fops got tween asleep and awake? Well then, legitimate Edgar, I must have your land. Our father's love is to the bastard Edmund, as to the legitimate. Fine word, legitimate. Well, my legitimate, if this letter speed and my inventions thrive, Edmund the base shall top the legitimate. I grow, I prosper. Now gods, stand up for bastards.
Even more than coveting Edgar's legacy, then Edmund is driven by a need to avenge his sense of inferiority. He pretends to hide the letter before showing it to his horrified father. He then puts his own thoughts in Edgar's mouth. I have heard him oft maintain it is to be fit that sons at perfect age and fathers declining, the father should be as ward to the son, and the son manage his revenue. Fathers, you have been warned. As for Edgar's supposed treachery, poor old Gloucester blames eclipses of the sun and moon, leaving Edmund once again alone to mock him before the audience.
This is the excellent foppery of the world, that when we are sick in fortune, often the surfeit of our own behaviour, we make guilty of our disasters the sun, the moon, and the stars, as if we were villains by necessity, fools by heavenly compulsion, knaves, thieves, and treachers by spherical predominance, drunkards, liars, and adulterers by an enforced obedience of planetary influence, and all that we are evil in by a divine thrusting on. An admirable evasion of whoremaster man to lay his goatish disposition to the charge of a star. My father compounded with my mother under the dragon's tail, and my nativity was under Ursa Major, so that it follows I am rough and lecherous. But I should have been that I am, had there made me a star in the firmament twinkled on my bastardizing. Edgar.
So here we have the perfect parallel. As Goneril and Regan set out to strip the aging Lear of his power, Edmund sets out to steal Edgar's inheritance from the aging Gloucester. But there is one key difference. Lear has dug his own grave through his foolish vanity, while Gloucester allowed himself to be duped by someone he trusts. Now the story gets going. Instead of going into exile, the ever-loyal Kent, that was me earlier, by the way, reappears disguised as a poor man offering his services to the king, while Edgar disguises himself as a lunatic fool, poor Tom. And then there is Fool, who, as always in Shakespeare, is anything but foolish. And he is free to say things to Lear that no one else would dare. Here he addresses the king.
Dost thou know the difference, my boy, between a bitter fool and a sweet fool?
No, lad, teach me.
That lord that counselled thee to give away thy land, come place him here by me. Do thou stand, for him stand. The sweet and bitter fool will presently appear, the one in motley hair, the other found out there.
Dost thou call me a fool, boy?
All thy other titles thou hast given away. That thou wast born with.
Lear quite enjoys bantering with Fool, but his plan to enjoy his new retirement soon comes unstuck when he and his band of merry knights visit Goneril at Albany's castle. Their drunken and uproarious behaviour angers Goneril. That this our court, she tells her father, infected with their manners, shows like a riotous inn, epicurism and lust make it more like a tavern or a brothel than a graced palace. She then decides to reduce his travelling court from 100 to 50 men. Old Lear can't believe her impudence and decides to turn for affection to his second daughter, Regan, but not before he lets Goneril have it.
Detested kite, thou liest. My train are men of choice and rarest parts, that all particulars of duty know, and in the most exact regard support the worships of their nature. Of their name. O most small fault, how ugly didst thou in Cordelia show, that like an engine wrenched my frame of nature from the fixed place, drew from heart all love, and added to the gall. O Lear, 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 beat at this gate, let thy folly in, let thy folly in, and thy dear judgment out. Go, go, my people.
Goneril's husband, poor fellow, he steps in to claim he knows nothing about any of this and he's totally guiltless. But Lear is not impressed.
It may be so, my lord. Hear, nature, hear, dear goddess, hear. Suspend thy purpose if thou didst intend to make this creature fruitful. Into her womb convey sterility. Dry up in her the organs of increase, and from her derogate body never spring a babe to honour her. If she must teem, create her child of spleen, that it may live and be a thwartless nature torment to her. Let it stamp wrinkles in her brow of youth, with cadent tears fret channels in her cheeks, turn all her mother's pains and benefits to laughter and contempt, that she may feel how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child. Away, away.
Wow, some curse. Although I must say that in general, Shakespeare does a fantastic line in good curses. Anyway, by the end of Act 1, Lear understands that he's screwed up mightily. Oh, let me not be mad, not mad, sweet heaven, keep me in temper, I would not be mad. But the world keeps turning against him. When he finds Regan at Gloucester's castle, she tells him to return to Goneril and apologize for wronging her. He refuses to do so, but strangely, he still has faith in Regan.
No, Regan, thou shalt never have my curse. Thy tender-hefted nature shall not give thee o'er to harshness. Her eyes are fierce, but thine do comfort and not burn. 'Tis not in thee to grudge my pleasures, to cut off my train, to bandy hasty words, to scant my sizes, and in conclusion to oppose the bolt against my coming in. Thou better know'st, the offices of nature, bond of childhood, effects of courtesy, dues of gratitude, thy half of the kingdom hast thou not forgot, wherein I thee endowed.
However, Regan's response is that she will receive no more than 25 knights, which prompts a chastened Lear to say that, well, maybe after all he will accept Goneril's offer of 50. Better than 25, no? Too late, old boy. Goneril now asks why he needs 25 or 10 or 5, and Regan adds, what needs 1? So that's it. He's had it with his daughters, and he explodes with rage.
Reason, not the need. Our basest beggars are in the poorest things superfluous. Allow not nature more than nature needs, man's life as cheap as beasts. Thou art a lady, if only to go warm were gorgeous, why nature needs not what thou gorgeous wear'st, which scarcely keeps thee warm. But for true need, you heavens give me that patience, patience I need. You see me here, you gods, a poor old man, as full of grief as age, wretched in both. If it be you that stir these daughters' hearts against their father, fool me not so much to bear it tamely. Touch me with noble anger, and let not women's weapons, water drops, stain my man's cheeks. No, you unnatural hags, I will have such revenges on you both, that all the world shall I will do such things, what they are, yet I know not, but they shall be the terrors of the earth. You think I'll weep? No, I'll not weep. I have full cause of weeping, but this heart shall break into 100,000 flaws, or ere I'll weep. Oh, fool, I shall go mad.
He walks out of Gloucester's castle and into a storm, and its doors are locked behind him. Only Fool accompanies him, and Kent, still in disguise, goes looking for him. And here at last we have the iconic image of Lear stumbling across the heath, raging against the world, and feeling in no small measure sorry for himself. With only Fool as consolation, Lear turns to him.
Blow winds and crack your cheeks, rage blow. You cataracts and hurricanes spout till you have drenched our steeples. Drown the cocks, you sulphurous and thought-executing fires. Vault couriers to oak-leaving thunderbolts, singe my white head. And thou, all-shaking thunder, smite flat the thick rotundity of the world. Crack nature's moulds and German spill at once that make ingrateful man.
Fool is no fool, and wishes to be out of the storm. Oh, nuncle, coarse holy water in a dry house is better than this rainwater out of doors. Good nuncle, in and ask thy daughter's blessing. Here the night pities neither wise man nor fool.
Rumble thy belly full. Spit fire, spout rain. Nor rain, wind, thunder, fire are my daughters. I tax you not. I tax not you, you elements, with unkindness. I never gave you kingdom, called you children. You owe me no subscription. Then let fall your horrible pleasure. Here I stand, your slave, a poor, infirm, weak, and despised old man. But yet I call you servile ministers that have you, with 2 pernicious daughters, joined your high-engendered battles against a head so old and white as this. Oh, 'tis foul.
Wandering the heath, Lear and Fool find a shelter, but to their shock they find poor Tom, that is, Edgar, disguised in rags, hiding there. He feigns madness, but Lear is persuaded that, as in his own case, Edgar's madness has been brought on by his daughters. Edgar has no daughters, it's not relevant.
Death, traitor! Nothing could have subdued nature to such a lowness but his unkind daughters. Is it the fashion that discarded fathers should have thus little mercy on their flesh? Judicious punishment, 'twas this flesh begot those pelican daughters.
And he goes on, thou art the thing itself. Unaccommodated man is no more, but such a poor, bare, forked animal as thou art. And seeing poor Tom almost naked, Lear begins to tear off his own clothes. Off, off, you lendings! Come, unbutton here! Meanwhile, the other plot gathers pace. With old Gloucester now persuaded of Edmund's loyalty, he tells his son, his bastard son, that he's received a secret letter disclosing that Lear has been betrayed and that French troops are on their way to England. He adds that they must support the king, and he sets off to warn the wandering monarch. Out on the heath, he fails to recognize his son Edgar, while Kent, also in disguise, warns Gloucester that Lear's wits begin to unsettle. Gloucester responds,
Canst thou blame him? His daughters seek his death. Ah, that good Kent. He said it would be thus, poor banished man. Thou sayest the king grows mad. I'll tell thee, friend, I am almost mad myself. I had a son, now outlawed from my blood. He sought my life, but lately, very late. I loved him, friend. No father his son dearer. To truth tell thee, the grief hath crazed my wits. What a night's this?
Edmund has chosen Regan's husband Cornwall as his ally, and he warns him of Gloucester's secret letter. Along with Regan and Goneril, Edmund and Cornwall are awaiting Gloucester in his own castle. But Cornwall tells Edmund to accompany Goneril to inform Albany of the imminent French attack. He also orders his servants to bring in Gloucester. Yippee, say the girls. Hang him instantly, says Regan. Pluck out his eyes, demands Goneril. And so it comes to pass. Gloucester is brought in, tied up and interrogated about the French plans and the king's whereabouts. He says Lear is on his way to Dover. Quote, "Because I would not see thy cruel nails pluck out his poor old eyes." But of course this is the fate that awaits Gloucester. After his first eye is blinded, a servant jumps up to his defence and wounds Cornwall, who nonetheless blinds Gloucester's other eye. Out, vile jelly. This is one of the grisliest scenes in Shakespeare's canon, except of course for the serial murders in Titus Andronicus, which you should never see having just had a meal. Gloucester is then excuse me. Gloucester is then pushed out onto the heath, where he finds poor Tom, whose voice he also fails to recognise as that of his son Edgar. And he asks a stranger to lead him to the cliffs of Dover, where he intends to leap to his death. In the meantime, Shakespeare taps another of his perennials, lust. You see, our sweet sisters, hang him instantly Regan, and pluck out his eyes Goneril, both fancy Edmund, who's clearly a man on the rise, so to speak. But it's Goneril who accompanying to her husband. But it's Goneril who is accompanying him to her husband at Albany's court. And there she discovers that Albany wants no part of the ongoing machinations. He's not such a loyal husband after all. Seeing trouble ahead, Goneril quickly dispatches Edmund to warn Cornwall to prepare his troops. But not before she tastes his lips. Oh, the difference between man and man, she muses. To thee, that's Edmund, a woman's services are due. My fool, that's Albany, usurps my body. When Albany appears, however, he turns on his wife.
Wisdom and goodness to the vile seem vile. Filths savour but themselves. What have you done? Tigers, not daughters. What have you performed? A father, and a gracious aged man, whose reverence even the head-lugged bear would lick. Most barbarous, most degenerate, have you madded? Could my good brother suffer you to do it? A man, a prince, by him so benefited? If that the heavens do not their visible spirits send quickly down to tame these vile offences, it will come. Humanity must perforce prey on itself like monsters of the deep.
Goneril barely has time to call her husband milk-livered before news arrives that A, Cornwall is dead, and B, Gloucester's eyes are no longer. Albany now realizes he must try to prevent a French invasion of Britain, but Goneril has more immediate worries. With Cornwall dead, her sister Regan is a widow, indeed a merry widow, all too available to marry Edmund. But Regan intercepts Goneril's letter, and in a meeting with Oswald, one of Goneril's messengers, she puts her foot in the door. She's not going to let this happen. She tells him,
I know your lady does not love your husband. I am sure of that. And at her late being here, she gave strange oeads and most speaking looks to noble Edmund. I know you are of her bosom.
I, madam?
I speak in understanding. You are, I note. Therefore I do advise you, take this note. My lord is dead. Edmund and I have talked, and more convenient is he for my hand than for your lady's. You may gather more. If you do find him, pray you give him this. And when your mistress hears thus much from you, I pray, desire her, call her wisdom to her. So fare you well. If you do chance to hear of that blind traitor, preferment falls on him that cuts him off.
By now, Cordelia has landed in England with the French troops and learns that her father is wandering around in the battle area.
Alack, 'tis he.
This is Cordelia.
Alack. Alack. Alack, 'tis he. Why, he was met even now as mad as the vexed sea, singing aloud, crowned with rank fumiter and furrow weeds, with burdocks, hemlock, nettles, cuckoo flowers, darnel, and all the idle weeds that grow in our sustaining corn. A century send forth Search every acre in the high-grown field and bring him to our eye.
Cordelia's in a tricky situation because she's persuaded her royal husband to invade England to restore her royal father to power. Other English courtiers, however, see only a French invasion, and this leads Albany and Edmund to join forces. But again, the plot takes second place to the magnificently tragic meeting between the blind Gloucester and the mad Lear. For the purposes of this play, they are, of course, real people. But Shakespeare also uses blindness and madness as metaphors that allow him to reach across the range of human experience. Lear tells Gloucester that he must see where the world is going, to which the poor Duke can only answer, "I see it feelingly." Lear responds,
What, art mad? A man may see how this world goes with no eyes. Look with thine ears. See how yond justice rails upon yon simple thief. Hark in thine ear. Change places, and handy-dandy, which is the justice, which is the thief? Thou hast seen a farmer's dog bark at a beggar.
Indeed, indeed. Lear goes rambling on, seemingly mad as a hatter, yet in fact we can see he's making sense. And you never have the feeling that he's forgotten that he is king. In fact, one of the central questions in this play is precisely how much of Lear's madness is also a disguise or perhaps a refuge. And this is often one of the issues that is debated after seeing a play, how the directors have decided to do this. In other words, the blind can see and the mad can talk sense. And soon Lear is addressing Gloucester himself.
If thou wilt weep my fortunes, take my eyes. I know thee well enough. Thy name is Gloucester. Thou must be patient. We came crying hither. Thou know'st, the first time that we smell the air, we wail and cry. I will preach to thee, mark.
Alack, alack the day.
When we are born, we cry that we are come to this great stage of fools. This is a good block. It were a delicate stratagem to shoe a troop of horse with felt. I'll put it in proof. And when I have stolen upon these sons-in-laws, then kill, 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 kill.
You need a bit of a split screen to follow different parts of the story as it comes together now. Kent reveals himself to Cordelia, and Cordelia finally meets her dad again, finding the old man fast asleep under the protection of, the French. When he awakes to see his daughter, he's perplexed.
Pray do not mock me. I am a very foolish, fond old man. Fourscore and upward, not an hour more nor less. And to deal plainly, I fear I am not in my perfect mind. Methinks I should know you, and know this man. Yet I am doubtful, for I am mainly ignorant what place is this, and all the skill I have remembers not these garments. Nor I know not where I did lodge last night. Do not laugh at me, for as I am a man, I think this lady to be my child, Cordelia.
And he concludes, "You must bear with me. Pray you now, forget and forgive. I am old and foolish." I haven't read the Nahum Tate happy ending version of King Lear, but I can imagine it's something like that, with Cordelia and Lear alive, reconciled and weeping in each other's arms. However, there are still loose ends to tie up here. For a start, under Edmund and Albany, the English are fighting back, and damn it, they've captured Lear and Cordelia. Regan and Goneril are also on the battlefield, more eager to conquer Edmund than the French. Edmund, meanwhile, having ordered the murder of Lear and Cordelia, turns his thoughts to those lusty sisters.
To both these sisters I have sworn my love, each jealous of the other, as the stung are of the adder. Which of them shall I take? Both? One? Or neither? Neither can be enjoyed if both remain alive. To take the widow exasperates, makes mad her sister Goneril, and hardly shall I carry out my side, her husband being alive. Now then we'll use his countenance for the battle, which being done, let her who would be rid of him devise his speedy taking off. As for the mercy which he intends to Lear and to Cordelia, the battle done, and they within our power, shall never see his pardon, for my state stands on me to defend, not to debate.
What Edmund doesn't know is that Goneril has poisoned Regan, who is carried away not feeling very well. Albany has also ordered Edmund's arrest for treason, and an unidentified knight, it is in fact poor Tom, aka Edgar, challenges him. When Edmund falls, Albany steps in amid Goneril's hysterical cries that Edmund had no reason to answer the challenge of an unknown opposite. Edgar then reveals his true identity. And even Edmund is moved when he describes their father's miseries. And Albany is above all taken aback. Where have you hid yourself? Have you known the miseries of your father?
By nursing them, my lord. List a brief tale, and when 'tis told, oh, that my heart would burst. The bloody proclamation to escape that followed me so near, oh, our lives' sweetness, that we, pain of death, would hourly die rather than die at once, taught me to shift into a madman's rags, to assume a semblance that this very dogs disdained, and in this habit met I my father with his bleeding rings, their precious stones new lost. Became his guide, led him, begged for him, and saved him from despair. Never, O fault, revealed myself unto him, until some half hour passed, when I was armed. Not sure, though hoping of this good success, I asked his blessing, and from first to last I told him my pilgrimage. But his flawed heart, alack too weak the conflict to support, twixt two extremes of passion, joy and grief, burst smilingly.
Again, we celebrate the richness of the language, but we still have those darned loose ends to tie up. The bodies of Regan and Goneril are brought in. Regan poisoned and Goneril is suicide. Edmund is now repentant and sends messengers to save Lear and Cordelia from the death sentence he'd ordered. Too late, of course. Lear arrives carrying Cordelia's inert body.
Howl, 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 howl. Oh, you are men of stones. Had I your tongues and eyes, I'd use them so that heaven's vault should crack. She's gone forever. I know when one is dead and when one lives. She's dead as earth. Lend me a looking glass. If that her breath will mist or stain the stone, why then she lives.
For a moment he thinks she's breathing, but no.
And my poor fool is hanged. No, no, no life. Why should a dog, a horse, a rat have life, and thou no breath at all? Thou couldn't no more. Never, 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 never. Pray you, undo this button. Thank you, sir. Did you see this? Look, her lips. Look there. Look there.
And he expires. We've also learned, without much explanation, that Edmund is also dead, leaving Albany with the last word.
The weight of this sad time we must obey. Speak what we feel, not what we ought to say. The oldest hath borne most. We that are young shall never see so much, nor live so long.
So there we have it. Lear and his three daughters dead, along with the villainous Cornwall and Edmund. And if by now the actors are exhausted, I can assure you so also is the audience. I don't mean you, of course, because you have the easy route. But those who brave the full Monty in the Bois de Boulogne, so to speak. And what a journey. Again, if you'll excuse me, I've drawn an analogy with opera. For a start, it's no coincidence that 19th century composers were drawn to Shakespeare's tragedies. Rossini wrote his Othello, a long time before Verdi composed a far better version. And of course, Verdi also did Macbeth and Falstaff, which is drawn mainly from The Merry Wives of Windsor. And among other operatic versions are Hamlet by Ambroise Thomas, Much Ado About Nothing by Berlioz, and Midsummer Night's Dream by Benjamin Britten. Actually, the Berlioz is Beatrice and it's called Benedict. But for us, But more to the point, Verdi also dreamed of writing his own King Lear. In fact, he went further, ordering up a libretto, but never actually composing it. So in a sense, it was left to his arch-rival Wagner to provide an operatic parallel to King Lear, the climactic work of his ring cycle, Götterdämmerung. Now, I hope you've all survived this forced march briefly and hurriedly across the stormy heath, and it will encourage you to go and see the real thing in early June. My real hope, though, is that with the plot tucked in your mind, you can delight in the wonder, and yes, the music of Shakespeare's language. Indeed, no less than great composers, Shakespeare resorts to leitmotifs, in his case, recurring words that underline the essence of his message. And you may have noticed, or perhaps not, in Lear, one word to heed is nothing. When at the beginning of the play, the king asks Cordelia to speak, "Nothing, my lord," she replies. "Nothing?" he explains. "Nothing," she repeats. "Nothing will come of nothing," he responds. And nothing appears another 29 times in the play, each time an echo of an earlier nothing. Another word that we will notice now, because Dominic emphasized it in a way, is see, which appears no fewer than 116 times, a constant reminder, not of Gloucester's blindness, but of Lear's blindness. Through his language, then, Shakespeare is giving us lessons on life. With 3,499 lines, King Lear is one of Shakespeare's longest dramas. At times, these lines roll over us like wave after wave at high tide. At other times, the quiet sea hides strong, even dangerous currents. Yet, like Prospero, Shakespeare is always in control of the storm. And at the end of the play, at the end of this play, in just 10 words, as we just heard, Albany, or rather Shakespeare, tells us what it was all about. Speak what we feel, not what we ought to say. Thank you, Dominic. You can pick any moral, any other line you wish.
I like that one.
But you know, that's the one that basically begins to unravel the whole of the play. When Lear doesn't want to hear this, then the whole of his life unravels. I'm sure we could pick several others. But it's just a proof that we got to the end.
Yeah.
You know, it's true that there's some degree of redemption at the end of this, and the good guy wins in the sense that Edmund loses, although of course, as always, the evil ones are among the more interesting ones, and Albany is left there to, you know, take over of some sort or other. And he's now more or less proven to be a good guy, and he can look for another wife. If you come out, you know, dancing and cheerful from that, I mean, I think in Hamlet, yes, of course they'll die, but you know, there is the notion that some form of justice has been done, and I'm not sure whether the deaths of Edmund and Regan and Goneril give one enough satisfaction that justice has been done, particularly since, you know, the others died too. But in some plays, we have a little reading group, and we read a Shakespeare play once a month, a group of us, and one of my favorites is Winter's Tale. It's a strange tale, a strange story, but you know, and the Tempest. I mean, you know, the late plays, which became in the 19th century known as romances, have at least there you have happy endings. I mean, you go through a lot of turmoil, and there is deaths. In Winter's Tale, there is the death of a child, and in others there are, you know, pretty dark moments, but they all end happily with dad and daughter at peace with each other.